What is up, football fans? Welcome to another edition of the ONETA Football Show, brought to you by PTE Creative. As always, I am your host, Evan Davies, and welcome back to the show after a fiery episode last week. This is usually the time where after a fiery episode, someone comes on and apologizes. I'm not apologizing for anything. I think Harrison Butker's a fucking idiot. But that's neither here nor there. I will touch on that subject one little bit here. I am seeing some. I can't believe his teammates are defending him. What is a teammate supposed to do? What are they supposed to do? Now it's all kind of being brushed under the rug, or brushed to the side. Not brushed under the rug, but brushed to the side, um, because that's the way our world works. He's altered his reputation forever, and that's what it's going to be. But that is last week's show. This week's show, we got some news that impacts the NFL in a way that a lot of people aren't contributing to the NFL. And that is college football. We have now reached a landmark agreement. It's not finalized, but a landmark agreement between the NCAA and the conferences and the schools that are a part of the NCAA's programs and the players. Football players specifically. Now, it goes into other sports, but it's really college football. College football is the driver here. We have a landmark settlement agreement, but again, it's not finalized. It's going to take at least 60 days before it can be preliminarily agreed upon, and then even further after that. But in this landmark settlement is where we're going to be resting, because I'm going to be doing a couple weeks of college football news and notes, along with football news and notes. We know it's a kind of a slow news period for the NFL at this point of the year, but that's A-okay. So we're going to be mixing in some college stuff, and I got a big project that I've actually been working on prior to even this podcast being a thing of doing. So that project bleeds really well, or follows this project really well. So today's show, we're talking about the House versus the NCAA, the House of Representatives versus the NCAA, which is from a class action lawsuit where a settlement has been reached, because the NCAA, frankly, would have lost their ass if this went to a court case. So I'm actually going to be using the athletics article as the best guide possible, kind of like the Harrison Butker episode that we did last week. I will be going quote by quote, just singular possible, just so I get my facts and figures right for all you fine folk out here in the. So without further ado, let's begin. So we're going to go. I will record my screen for you as well. So we're over at the Athletic. The NCAA and its power conferences, which are your bigger five conferences, agreed on Thursday, which was May 24th, to allow college students to receive pay directly from the universities they compete for, setting a potential break from the organization's century-old system of amateurism. And again, this is from the Athletic. So let's start basics. Let's start there. This is the end of amateurism, which was frankly a fucking sham for the last forever. But let's even try to be a little bit more realistic. Amateurism has not been a thing my entire lifetime. I am 31, soon to be 32 years old. I was born in 1992. There have been consistent pay-to-play scandals, consistent payment issues, and eligibility issues for players, both high quality and low quality, throughout the entire NCAA college system, for players being compensated to play for an NCAA affiliated team. And a lot of people say, well, what's the NCAA in this? You play for schools, but all the schools are part of the NCAA, which is an affiliated body that governs sports to a degree. Frankly, we've been seeing the NCAA weaken, especially the last 5 years, but 10 years and even further behind that. But especially the last 5 years, the NCAA has shown that they are not a worthwhile body. beyond the fact that they're incredibly flawed, they are a vindictive witch hunting group that tries to control everything and has been on the wrong side of history until this settlement agreement. And the only reason they made this settlement agreement is so they could survive. A great clip, if you want to see sentiments about the NCAA, go check out Pat McAfee's comments on the Pat McAfee show and his entire crew. They show the vitriol of a lot of college athletes and a lot of athletes in general towards the NCAA of how people really feel about it, if you want to feel more about it. So this is a landmark case because amateurism, meaning, for those who are not part of the lingo, college players have never been paid outside of the NIL era of 2021 and forward, 2020 and forward. NIL became a thing pre-2020, as it became far more of a legal case and then was granted that it's unconstitutional not to allow players to have their name, image, and likeness capitalized on themselves. But the NCAA and its schools, because they want to keep all the money and the revenue, have always said amateurism, meaning you don't get to pay to play, and it was always under the guise of, well, you're getting an education. You're getting an education. Not all those players are on scholarship, and frankly, let's be honest, those players are what fuels higher levels of revenue, because the more successful the players are, the more interesting the players are as individuals, the more likely people are to watch the program, which drives up revenue, commercial dollars, merchandise sales, interest in students wanting to go to those schools. Even for instance, if I look at my own life, prior to having a little bit of a life shift in the later years of high school era, I wanted to go to Notre Dame because I was a Notre Dame football fan at the time. I loved Brady Quinn as a college athlete. I really liked what Notre Dame was doing. I really liked pretty much everything about Notre Dame at that time. Now I think Notre Dame's kind of corny, but that's just me. But I wanted to go to Notre Dame. Even when I was a younger kid, I loved Miami, Florida's football program. All my favorite players played for Miami. I wanted to go to school in Miami, Florida, because of how much that football program meant to me as a younger child. And so those are the kind of things that influence these decisions. You're influencing hundreds of thousands and millions of young people. They want to go to these bigger schools to be a part of those programs, even if they're not in the program themselves. They want to support it. They want to be a part of it. That's what college football is about in some way, shape, or form, is sharing the collegiate experience. But the fact that players weren't paid, you're gaining everything as an institution, as the NCAA, when they couldn't be paid. So now we do have the case to be paid. And the settlement at least has had a preliminary agreement, but it cannot be, or an initial agreement. The preliminary agreement, preliminary settlement cannot happen for 45 to 60 days until they get in front of another judge. That taken care of, and then you're going to go forward. There are inequities, so we're going to keep talking about it. So if we go back to the screen, we have, class action lawsuit. I have announced terms on a settlement for $2.75. I've seen as high as $2.8 billion in back pay damages, which is eligible to former Division I athletes, as well as they've also created a future revenue sharing model between power conference schools and athletes. So what does that really mean? That means it was not well suited in this article. It's one of the details The Athletic, I was a little disappointed not to see them do, but The Athletic does good reporting, so I'm not going to shit on them too much. This backdates all the way to 2016, which was really the start of heavy lawsuits and of name, image, and likeness deals really taking footholds, leading to the NIL era. There we go. These acronyms, all these syllables. Leading to that becoming a thing. So back pay can go all the way to 2016. So if you were a Division I athlete, during that time, from 2016 onward, you can be paid as part of this settlement, as part of this class action lawsuit. You can be paid for damages of back pay all the way back to 2016. It does not go back further than that. There are clearly athletes that should be getting a lot more money, but that wasn't the case. I look at guys, whether I like them or not, but how can you not say a Tim Tebow didn't deserve to be paid by the University of Florida? The University of Florida to this day is remembered for their success with Urban Meyer because of Tim Tebow. You know, Maurice Claret, another example from Ohio State early when they became the Ohio State to the masses, not just the university itself. There's been athletes and players. Reggie Bush just got his Heisman back after years of not having it because of violations, which all are absolute fucking horseshit. So now we have the back pay, but unfortunately it only goes back to 2016. So those athletes that really deserved a shot at getting that money based on name, image, and likeness, it's not a thing until now. And that goes back to 2016 to now. And this $2.8 billion will be paid out over the next 10-year period. The most interesting thing about it actually is the figures of how it's being paid, in my humble opinion. So we go here. This is just a basic quote from the attorneys. Announcement comes after a week in which the NCAA Board of Governors and leaders from the Power 5 conferences, which is the ACC, which is highlighted by Clemson, and then you can go into a other few schools. And football related due to COVID, Notre Dame technically is a part of it, even though they're kind of not. The ACC, the Big 12, which is formerly Texas, Oklahoma, who are now joining the SEC. Big 10, those are your classics: Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin. That's your Big 10. Your Pac-12, which will no longer exist, but the Pac-12 as an organization is still on the hook for this. The Pac-12, which has your USCs, your Washingtons, your Oregons. And then the SEC, the most widely known and most successful conference in the last probably 30 years, if you want to go back that far, having Alabama, Georgia, LSU. It's the football conference in America. So those are the Power 5 conference. They came to terms with this. They all voted to approve the terms. So only the Power 5 conferences in the NCAA Board of Directors. That's the tricky part. So that's why we're going to go further down, and we're going to go into who is actually going to be paying for this, and then I will break down how it's going to be working. So you have a $2.8 billion settlement. And the print's right here, but I'll show my face once again. Oh, God, dang it. You're going to see a little bike action that's from our last show, but don't worry about that if you're on the video segment. So there's $2.8 billion here to be handed out as part of this class action lawsuit. Okay? Retroactive to 2016, the NCAA was only responsible for 41% of that. Now, people would say, it's still a pretty penny. It's $1.2 billion. However, the NCAA being the biggest governing body and the biggest reason why, because they have the most ability to influence the sport as a whole. They have the most ability to go after people if they do not like your decisions or not like what you're doing. They have the most wishy-washy rule enforcement whatsoever. If they like you, they don't go after you. If they want to go after you, make an example of you, they're going to do it. They're only on the hook for 41%. Frankly, they agreed to that number so they could save themselves, because the NCAA, again, is a fucking joke. It's a horrible organization. They have no idea what the fuck they're doing. They have no idea how they can do anything. The conferences have more power, and that's why the NCAA is a sham when it comes to Division I football. Have at it. The NCAA has argued on people who are NCAA supporters. It's better for college athletics as a whole, but not just football. However, the NCAA here shows that they only care about football because it's what makes them money. But then magically, when they can look like the good guys, that's when they give a shit about everybody else. But the NCAA is responsible for 41% of that, so it's $1.2 billion. The power conferences, this is an absurd statement, are responsible for 24% of that. So schools in those Power 5 conferences are responsible for 24% of the Group of 5 schools. So Group of 5, I'll go to another one right here if you'd like to see. This is just a basic Wikipedia to show you out if you are a viewer. So your basics here Group of 5 schools are in the FBS subdivision. So that's the American Athletic Conference, the AC, Conference USA, MAC, which is the Mid-American Conference, Mountain West Conference, and the Sun Belt. So those are all smaller conferences that are not widely considered here, but that's A-okay. There's still plenty of really quality schools there. Somehow they got on the hook for 10%, which, okay, fine. They're on the hook for 10%. But why is that? Why do you think, oh, here's the other ones. The FCS, which is a lower ranking of football, is responsible for 13%, and non-football Division I schools are responsible for 12% of this lawsuit. Okay, this lawsuit is mostly driven by football, number one. Number two, if you look at the great impactors of who controls the game and who impacts the game, the NCAA and the Power 5 conferences, those are the big impactors. Okay? Those are the schools everybody knows. Those are the schools that draw ratings. Those are the schools that draw business, markets. They drive all of that. And then the players that are beholden to NCAA rules at a Power 5 conference, those are the ones dealing most with name, image, and likeness issues, driving this lawsuit going forward and changing the game for the better. Power 5 conferences in the NCAA, in this lawsuit, agreed to them by them, are only responsible for 65% of this lawsuit. So even though they're the biggest issues, they're the biggest contributors to the issue, they're only taking 2/3 of the blame. All the other schools, the group of 5 takes 10%, which is crazy because they're Division I schools. Then the FCS, which is even lower ranking, takes 13%. That's not nearly that's ridiculous. And then non-football Division I schools, just so they can claim that they still give a shit about other sports, they're responsible for 12%. Is there name, image, likeness deals in every sport? There are. There are big money examples that you can find in pretty much any sport. But the contributors of name, image, and likeness in other sports outside of perhaps basketball is next to nothing compared to football. And you have non-football Division I schools paying 12% of this lawsuit. Okay, go fuck yourself. And again, we're going to go back to the Athletic article to show you here, okay? We go here. They are responsible for 65% of this. Who agreed to the deal in the first place? The NCAA Board of Governors and the leaders from the Power 5 conferences. They're the ones that agreed to it. So think about that. Think about the fucking sham that is. That the NCAA Board of Directors and only the representatives from the Power 5 conferences, they're the only ones that get to agree to this deal because they're the true power brokers in the sport. They're the ones with the most to lose, and they say, okay, yeah, we'll take the brunt of it. And they leave 35% on the table for other schools. What the fuck? Like, that number immediately has to go up to 75, 80% if you were looking at realistic numbers and the realistic schools that can really afford to do those kinds of things. Every school in these institutions will be fine because this is spread out over 10 years. It's different percentage points, all that kind of stuff. They'll figure it out. However, and insurance is going to pay for the vast majority of this, let's be honest. But are you fucking kidding me? If you want to see, I hate to be this guy because again, it gets political for a lot of people, but I got political last week and I won't give a fuck. I'll do it again here. If you want to see the rich take advantage of a system, look no further than this fucking agreement. Group of 5 schools got no representation in this initial agreement. FCS schools got no representation during this. Non-football Division I schools got no representation in this. Only the Power 5 conferences in the NCAA. And a lot of people can say, well, power conferences, that's not inherently football. They're Power 5 conferences of football. That's why they're called the Power 5 conferences. It's not the Power 5 conferences of basketball. It's the Power 5 conferences of football. You get no representation. You get no say in the deal whatsoever. And you realistically just have to say, okay, yeah, I guess we're on the hook for, especially the FCS, 13%. Are you out of your fucking mind? Absolutely not. That is absurd. An absurd number to be agreed upon. But again, it's just the rich manipulating the fucking system. In this case, the rich of football, the power brokers of football, pawning off on someone else. How fucking ridiculous is that? Think about that. You get no representation of the deal and you show up the next day, oh, hey, I know I might have to help a little bit. Yeah, you're going to take 35% of this. What about you? You did almost everything. I just kind of was part of the system. I got wrangled into this. I didn't do anything wrong. Well, you owe a lot of money too. Go fuck yourselves on that one, Power 5, and especially the NCAA with only 41%. This is your fault, and you're a fucking sham, and you're a piece of shit. And you can't govern anything. But again, that's opinion. So let's go back to the article and look back at the factual representation of this as much as we possibly can. So we are back at that article. Here is the biggest things that are super positive for schools to worry about. Okay. Oh boy. Let's see. Where are these numbers? Where are we? Okay. So when it comes to revenue sharing, the release specified that the 22% of the average of Power Conference programs' revenues allotted for revenue sharing is for the first year of the settlement, which will increase over time, and that the 22% would translate to an amount projected to be significantly more than $20 million per school. Okay, so 22% of all revenue sharing based off of football and any athletic endeavor. 22% of that will be going to the athletes. That's great because eventually it was at zero. So that's a huge jump forward. And that means $20 plus million from every school can now go to the athletes that are driving people to those schools, which is helping make them money by being successful athletes. So that is tremendous here. In addition to that, here's the thing. The $20 million number has been widely referenced as a ballpark figure based on recent revenues, and it's a good starting point. It is also optional. Schools can opt into the revenue distribution model and determine which athletes in which sports they want to pay. So this is a little bit problematic because schools can then choose who gets money and who doesn't. For sports, there will be more inequity in between the sports. However, people believing all sports are equal right now. I need you to look at my face if you're on the video format of this one. People believing all the sports being equal right now. You serious? It's not a serious outlook. It isn't equal, never has been equal, and never will be equal. Because college sports is driven by college football and then college basketball. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm saying it's honest. If you believe all college athletics is on the same even playing field, you're out of your fucking mind. Okay? All due respect to swimming, water polo, fucking lacrosse, volleyball, whatever the case, bowling, whatever the fuck it is, college golf. All due respect to those sports. Okay? They're not the drivers that football is, or even basketball. But basketball, even compared to football, is not the same. Okay? College sports is driven by football and then basketball second. No sport is treated equal to football. It's just flat out the truth here. So think about that when we're talking about how they can do things. It's going to be creating more inequity between these sports. However, it is still positive because it's further rewarding players for what they're actually doing for their schools and being able to capitalize on what they bring to them. So as we go back here, Again, it is optional. The cap on the money used to pay athletes would grow slightly each year as the power conference's projected overall revenues increase, which is great. The release also describes the revenue sharing as an addition to scholarships, third-party NLI payments, NIL payments, healthcare, and other benefits that college athletes already receive. The estimates that over the 10-year settlement period, the total value would exceed $20 billion, making it one of the largest antitrust class action settlements in history, which is tremendous. That's absolutely tremendous. So again, schools will, in the athletes in this lawsuit, athletes will still get revenue sharing from the lawsuit, and they'll still be eligible for scholarships, name, image, and likeness deals, which means they can still go get third-party deals from. They can go do a car commercial. They can go do, school commercials that aren't just them doing the school a favor. They can endorse products. Caitlin Clark can get both a basketball scholarship and, theoretically, in this case, she can make a deal with Gatorade. Okay, all that is possible. Same thing when we think about football. Shedeur Sanders is one of the bigger players. Quinn Ewers, Travis Hunter, those kinds of players. Carson Beck out of Georgia, all these kinds of players that are phenomenal greats at the sport in the moment. They can all go make their deals off of name, image, and likeness, and also still be eligible for scholarships, revenue sharing, all that stuff. So that is tremendous for players. That's tremendous for schools. That's huge positives. There are negatives to this deal. We already went over one, which is the percentage of the deal being covered by others versus the NCAA. But let's go back to it a little more. So we're going to go back to the Athletic article as our biggest guide. So we understand it's over 10 years. The NCAA, it's fucking sham. Don't gives a shit what they're actually saying because they're a bunch of fucking lying assholes. Here's one thing that is very important here. Again, it'll take 30 to 45 days to get in front of another judge. The preliminary approval is once that is granted, if it is granted, then there will be a set period of several months, which in the retroactive damages and future revenue sharing classes are notified and have an opportunity to either opt out or object to the terms of the agreement, depending on the judge's ruling. It's great. All right, there are unresolved terms. For instance, the 22% of revenue sharing. That's great because it's better than zero. That's a huge jump forward. Correct. However, that was negotiated without athlete input, so no representation on the part of the athlete, and it's a much lower rate than is distributed to athletes in most American professional leagues. So here's the biggest thing. You're seeing huge numbers here. That big one right there, 22% moving forward for athletes with no representation. Think about this. The revenue share with players in the NFL, it's not 50. I believe it was one. I think it's 49, but I think I might be even crazier. Nonetheless, you have through the NFL Players Association, you have roughly 3,000 players in an active role as a part of the NFLPA, gaining parts of the revenue. They divide that entire pot. You're talking about 134 Division I football schools, let alone the other schools that are Division I that don't have football. They all share that. Plus, you have to remember there's a 53-man roster plus the practice squads and everything else in the NFL, all the players that are floating around in the ether. They get a share of the revenue. Great. College athletics, all those teams there is at least 100 players on almost every single football team, especially big football teams. Basketball teams have more players. Baseball teams have more. They all have more players. So you have to divide all of that between all those people. There are millions of college athletes. There are very few professional athletes. There's a few thousand professional athletes. There's easily in the seven figures of college athletics. and college athletes. So you have to divide that amongst all of them. So it's not great, and it's a smaller share than other professional leagues. In college football, college basketball, college athletics in general is a constant fixture in television, which creates revenue for the schools, which then has to be shared with the athletes. So we are still talking about a big chunk of change that they deserve more than 22%. This was a self-preservation deal on the part of the NCAA and its Power 5 partners, because they don't want to give more than what they have to. So I would highly, highly assume that number is going to go up as a part of the final settlement, if the settlement lasts. So as we continue into that, though, you have to realize that there's a lot more people that have to get a piece of that pie than say an NBA revenue sharing or an NFL share. Like, that's just not how it. With this, another good positive, but comes with the negative, is this. I saw it somewhere, but oh well, whatever. It's not that big a deal. The NCAA scholarship caps would also be eliminated by the settlement and give way to roster limits. So, roster limits aren't a huge thing in college football. There's not many set roster spots on college teams. However, there is caps on how many scholarships you can have per sport, per school, all that kind of stuff. All that goes by the wayside for when it comes to athletics. But that means roster limits are going to be there. So theoretically, we're no longer going to see football teams in the hundreds. You're going to see probably 85 spots on the football team, which is both good and bad. That means you're getting a higher crop of talent, which theoretically means the game is going to get only better, because you're not going to see as many of, it's not like you saw a ton of scrub players anyways. You always see the best of the best in college, but finite amount of people means a higher, better product, but it also means less people have the opportunity to go do that. There are people in programs that are concerned about what this impacts a walk-on, and there is seemingly tons of walk-on stories every year of a kid walks onto a program, he becomes a star and a huge contributor. So how does this impact walk-ons? We're not sure yet. We're going to see that in the long term. But the biggest thing to realize on this one, it's not final. It's not final. So this is not the only thing. This is the initial number. The biggest thing to worry about, besides the fact that this is not final, numbers will be changed. I guarantee you numbers will be changed. And even though it's wrong, I guarantee you somehow the NCAA or the Power 5 conferences are going to try to weasel out even more percentage onto the smaller partners that they have in the Group of 5, in the FCS, and the non-football Division I schools. However, let's think more football on this one. I said, how does this impact the NFL? Right now, for the first time in over almost 2 decades, but a decade plus, for the first time in 12 years, I think, the NCAA football will have its own video game. So it's College Football 25. It comes out in July. How does that video game get impacted by this? How do profit shares go? You have Quinn Ewers, Travis Hunter, and God damn it, there's another guy on the roster. You have 3 major players, and there's a few other ones sprinkled in there, but those are the 3 major names on the cover. How are they being impacted? Is that through an NIL deal? Or, since you have to do name, image, likeness for all those players, does that go into NCAA territory and governing body territory? Not just so. How does that impact the video game? How does this impact your other sports? Okay. How do all those, when you start picking and choosing who gets money, how do they get it? Those 2 things are huge when it comes to football. The video game is obvious. There's a direct parable. Madden. They have to play the NFL Players Associations for the license, the name, image, and likeness to be used. So it was just a big deal because Marvin Harrison Jr. finally signed a name, image, and likeness deal with the NFLPA, which allows them to use his name and use his image to sell jerseys, trading cards, whatever you have it with, a Arizona Cardinals logo on it. To use him, you have to be able to have that deal in place. But to make Madden, they have to make a deal with the NFL Players Association and the NFL to use their intellectual property, their name, their images, their likenesses, all that kind of stuff. And that's a direct parable. That's an obvious one. How does that impact it? Second of all, how does that show? If actually, when does it not even go second of all? How does NCAA? How does that go over into Madden? For those who don't realize, in the past, as the games are getting more advanced into the internet age, Madden, you could actually import players from NCAA into Madden. So if you can do that, how does that impact future earnings in future games with future updates? Because now we live in the age where it's not, I want to get, Jonathan Sanborn from, Texas State as my quarterback, and it's just a guy that looks like he has a random mustache and he's just randomly created through the computer. Now you're going to see, I want Quinn Ewers of Texas playing in 2024. I want him to be my quarterback in Madden 25 or Madden 26 or Madden 27. That file continues with his name, image, and likeness. So does that exist? Does it not exist? It affects professional football because it's a huge moneymaker for professional football and the interest in professional football. It's one. Other sports, it impacts football because of this. Football is already having a crisis of safety, which they're trying to address, versus other sports. In fact, this deal could be theoretically good for football in a really negative way, in the fact that if all the money of college athletics is going to be funneled towards football, that means you're going to get more athletes going that way, which is a better crop of athletes coming to professional football. Now, is that a huge change? No. Will it be a change? Yes. Because there are really high quality athletes that have thought about their safety, have thought about their long-term health and said, football's not for me. I'm going the basketball route, or I'm going the soccer route, or the baseball route, or whatever the case may be. Now, if there's even more incentive to go the football route, you're going to get more people going the football route. So it will impact the professional game quite a bit, even if it's not the right reason to do so. And the biggest thing that's going to impact professional football is actually through how it impacts college football. In my opinion, is how does this affect conference realignment and distribution? How are teams aligned? We are now seeing the Big Ten is going to be up to 25 teams, where USC, Oregon, Washington, those kind of programs, they're joining, at least USC and Oregon, they're joining the Big Ten. There's theoretically times where Rutgers, which is in New Jersey, which is not far away from where I'm currently residing, not much longer, but nonetheless, Rutgers in New Jersey, I guess for those on screen, it's over here, it's going to have to fly all the way to Los Angeles to play USC. And back. But don't remember, college athletes. Again, this is professional. This is pay to play. This is professional sports now. It's just not the highest level of professional sports. So, how does that impact it? You're going to get athletes that are getting closer to professional treatment. That's going to impact the way they're trained, the way they are treated health-wise, because there's going to be more impact due to travel and other things. So, I would not be shocked with all these money things in there. If conference realignment in the next 5 to 10 years, they have to have a major reset. Or there's going to be another reset in the fact that the Power 5 conferences are just going to say, we're hosting our own championship game. It's the real championship game because we know we're better than you. We don't have to worry about, Texas State. All due respect to them, it's not, I'm just picking a random team out. We don't have to worry about Texas State in a group of 5 conference because they're not part of a Power 5. And I could be completely wrong. Now, just to make sure I'm on top of that, I'm going to check Texas State's conference here. Yeah, they're part of the Sun Belt. Okay, so Texas State is part of the Group of Five. So I guessed correctly based on that. But it's not meant to shit on Texas State. If you're listening and you're a big Texas State fan, or you're from Texas State, or you graduated from Texas State, it's not to shit on you. It's just an example. Okay. How do we get to that? Because then it also impacts television deals, times that the NFL can play and when they can't play, because they don't want to. As much as they are willing to shit on anybody, clearly the NFL is taking over Christmas. That used to be an NBA thing. Now they're just like, fuck you, NBA. It's our day. Hence the reason they're playing on Wednesdays this week or this year. It's going to impact them. They don't want to go directly against college football playoffs. Or college football playoffs are happening with the teams of 14. More teams are going to be distributed for more television product because they're going to want higher sharings of revenue so can play, so they can gain more. I'm saying they, as in the NCAA, as in college football teams. They're going to want more teams on television with big ratings, with bigger programming slots, with big networks such as ABC, CBS, ESPN, Fox. They already have them, but they're going to drive them even more as a television property because they want to recoup that money that they're losing now that they're going to have to do revenue sharing. That all impacts the NFL because how much revenue is then left for the NFL, that's not really a problem. Don't worry about that. It's not as if the NFL is going to die. It's not. It's clearly the number one product in the national consciousness of the United States. But it impacts when they can play. It impacts what network they're going to play on because a network might say, hey, it's more efficient. We get more programming for less. With college football and we get good ratings, it's worth us to do that then instead of college football. And then we might see more streaming models take up NFL games or vice versa. We might say terrestrial television go, fuck that. We need NFL football to save us. College football, you go the streaming route. Go either way. It's going to impact streaming deals. It's going to impact all these kinds of things. So conference alignment, where teams are playing, who they're playing against, that impacts television product. Television product impacts all sports, but especially within the same sport, it impacts football, how they do it. This is a landmark case that is not done by any stretch of the imagination. It's $2.8 billion of back pay to people that deserved it because they made people interested in colleges. I'm a huge Alabama fan. I have no affiliation, and when I say a huge Alabama fan, becoming more of a scout, becoming someone who's very interested in how players are developed. I have absolutely adored Alabama football for a decade because I saw quality players coming out all the time because Nick Saban and staff knew how to find, grow, develop talent to play at the next level of football. I have no official affiliation with the state of Alabama. Never been there. Okay? I have no affiliation with anybody in the South whatsoever. But I'm a huge Alabama football fan because of the product they put on the field. It's fun to watch. I enjoy watching them. So it's a television product. It's how they do things. So this kind of stuff impacts even people who have no real interest in terms of inherent value or inherent, rooting interest in the sport or in the team. That impacts all of that. So this is $2.8 billion going to people that deserved it and gained interest in it. That's where I was kind of going with that thought, is that, those players on Alabama that really got me intrigued into watching Alabama, they are now going to get rewarded for that more than they ever could back in the day. That's great. Okay. These are very good and positive things. It's a step forward. There's going to be negatives with the positive. Get used to that. Another thought I didn't have for you is about next week's show. I'm going to save that for 1 second. Because if we're talking about people getting paid, we're asking people for help. I gotta ask you guys for help, man. Head on over to our Etsy shop. Go to ptecreative.etsy.com. And you know what? How about you help me out with a little NIL deal of my own, I guess, or a little settlement deal. I'm only joking. If we go over to the screen, don't worry about that athletic. Oh, the athletic is great and it's only $2 a month, so you may want to give them some money, some great content. But I'm asking you, head on over to ptecreative.etsy.com and go check out some cool merch like the ones you're seeing on screen if you are watching on YouTube. We got cool stuff that's got football related things here. We've got fiction related stuff. We've got Pokemon related stuff for all the content we do. We got our own little fashion line with the You Hate to See It line. We've got all kinds of cool stuff over at Etsy. So go to ptecreative.etsy.com. Like this promo right here. Go help yourself with some cool merch, and it certainly helps me out as well. So if we're talking about people getting paid, I'd like to get paid. I have no problem admitting that. That's why I have an Etsy shop. So go to ptecreative.etsy.com and go get yourself some cool merch. But back to that show note. I have a big project. I don't know how many shows it's going to be, but I have, in the near future, I have realigned all 134 Division I schools for college football. That's as of the year 2024 to 2025. One of those 2 years. I've aligned all of them into conference based on geographic things, but I've taken into account old rivalries, things of that nature, to preserve the history so we can get a more classic model of the NCAA with more functioning things about money involved as well. So that is going to be some new topics coming up on the show as we kind of we dry up on NFL topics a little bit this time of year, and that's A-okay because everybody needs a little downtime, a little down period. We're going into conference realignments and how to fix college football. How to fix college football. So we're going to do all that in the next couple weeks over here on the ONETA show or the ONETA football show, and I'm excited to do it for you. That is going to do it for today's show. I hope you did enjoy the show. If you did, if you're on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, share this with as many football fans as you possibly can, even if you just want to ridicule me. I don't care. It's statistics and it's giving me feedback. And hit that notification bell so you can listen to it anytime you want to. If you're on Spotify, leave us a review on Spotify. We'd love to get some more reviews out of you guys. We'd certainly appreciate it. Again, go back to YouTube anyways, no matter what, for more content Monday through Friday. Be super appreciated. And go check out our socials. More stuff is getting posted all the time over on our socials. Just the TikTok and the Instagram. Check out over at ptecreative.com. And again, Joe, check out our Etsy shop, ptecreative.etsy.com. That's going to do it for this show. I appreciate all of you guys watching, all of you guys listening, fellow football fans. Love to you all. We'll get back to football season soon. Peace!